Hey everybody, my name is Dustin Miller. Hope everybody's doing good. I chose the Sacred Scripture, Sacred War, the Bible, and the American Revolution as a book. The chapter out of the book that I chose was "The Lord is a Man of War." This chapter refers to the comparison between the American Revolution and the Exodus story out of the Bible. The Exodus was synonymous with liberty in the Revolutionary America. Collins believed that liberty was a divine conviction that required and even demanded divine violence. Patriots who considered themselves enslaved to Great Britain compared themselves to the Israelites who were enslaved by the Egyptians. Colonists also saw George Washington and his leadership as a comparison to Moses and how he led the Israelites to their promised land. George Washington was going to lead us through the war to our promised land. The theme of God helping the Patriots defeat the world's best trained and well-funded military was in fact a miracle unto itself. They compared that miracle to the miracle that occurred at the Red Sea where the waters parted and Moses led his people across, and how the Egyptians were defeated there by God. The chapter also took a stand on the founding fathers and what they believed in. In the book of Abigail and John, Selected Letters of the Addams Family, this book gave account. It was basically John and his wife Abigail pen paling back and forth through the first part of the war, and how during this time the founding fathers were comparing the story of the Exodus with the decision of whether to rebel against Great Britain. Two of the key founding fathers that were mentioned were Thomas Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin, and it goes on to say that they were actually trying to get the story of Exodus into our motto or into our seal. And the argument out of that part of the chapter was that the Exodus narrative shows the argument that the biblical theme was instrumental in relaying the providence of God and the revolutionary purpose of the colonies. One key thing that I hit on with this chapter was basically the effect that the Great Awakening and the story of Exodus had on slavery, even during the Revolutionary War and after the Revolutionary War leading up to the Civil War. It seems after the Great Awakening, once you brought the Bible to slaves and religion to slaves, and preachers started to preach on it, they started identifying with the Exodus narrative. An example of this can be found in the letters of James Habersham, a Georgia merchant. He wrote that David, a preacher in Savannah, had preached on the Exodus to the congregation of both whites and blacks in May of 1775, almost a month after the Revolutionary War had begun. Apparently, David preached that God would send deliverance to the Negroes from the power of their masters, and he freed the children of Israelites from Egyptian bondage. To the whites and his attendants, they were outraged. In fact, they tried to grab him while he was in the midst of the sermon. The Georgia merchant goes on having to arrange passage all the way back to England to save this guy from getting hung. Of course, the issue of slavery would end up breaking apart in the Union and ushering in a great Civil War. And this issue was brought up, I believe, at Continental Congress, but then they decided that, hey, right now we don't need to touch this. We got enough to deal with, and we'll put this off till later. So, hope you like my review.